I chose her best friend's father. That summer began like any other, but I never imagined it would unravel the threads of my life and stitch together something entirely new. Something dangerous. I was 35, walking the familiar stone path to Lydia's house with my worn leather weekend bag bouncing against my hip, the scent of her mother's blooming lilacs drifting across the yard. I was there to stay in their guest house for 3 months while I transitioned between apartments. My career as a freelance interior designer was gaining momentum, and I cherished my independence. But after my husband Jack's betrayal 2 years earlier with someone I thought was a friend, a quiet summer felt like healing. Lydia was my anchor. It had been that way since we were 16, yet she could not have known that her father, Marcus, would become the person who shook me to my core. Marcus was everything I had once admired from a safe distance, the cool confidence, the way he listened when you spoke as if weighing every word, the small smile hiding in the corner of his mouth. Twice my age, tall with broad shoulders, slightly silver hair catching sunlight, and a scent that was a mix of cedarwood and faint coffee. He was simply Lydia's dad, until he was not. The first night over dinner. The clink of silverware against china echoed in the soft hum of conversation. I laughed at Lydia's travel stories, but every so often I caught Marcus watching me, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but the kind of glance that lingered just enough to leave a trace in your mind. I told myself it was nothing. The night I realized it was something came unexpectedly. It had been a hot, heavy day, and the cicadas hummed like the air itself was vibrating. I returned late, only to find Marcus in the guesthouse kitchen, fixing the flickering light I had mentioned casually that morning. The close space around us seemed smaller than ever. I could smell the faint soap from his hands, hear the soft creak of his stance as he reached upward. When he glanced down at me, holding my gaze a moment longer than was polite, the air shifted. For reasons I could not name, my pulse quickened. I felt that hollow, dangerous spark of recognition, the kind that says, here is someone who could see you, truly see you, and that was precisely why it was wrong. I had told myself for years that love after Jack was something I had aged out of. But Marcus began to appear and reappear, fixing little things, asking about my day, offering coffee early in the morning, lingering with his hand resting lightly on the back of my chair. If this confession has you holding your breath the way I did each time I saw his silhouette in the doorway, hit like and share, because you will not believe what happened next. It happened in fragments. One evening, I was sitting outside, a glass of white wine warming in my hand, the humming crickets almost deafening. I heard his footsteps behind me before I saw him. Slow, steady, confident. He sat across from me, long after Lydia had retired upstairs. We spoke about life, about the ache of losing people. He told me about his late wife, how grief does not fade but changes shape. I told him about Jack, about the quiet rage of betrayal, about the nights I slept pressed against the wall just to feel something solid. He listened without interrupting. When I looked up, his eyes reflected something I recognized, the same loneliness lodged in my own chest. Nights after that grew longer. Sometimes we would walk through the garden, the scent of roses thick in the humid night, fireflies speckling the dark. Other times we would sit at the kitchen table in the main house, his hand brushing mine as I reached for more sugar, the faint warmth of his skin lingering even after he pulled away. Once, when it began to rain without warning, he stepped closer in the doorway, shielding me from the wind. That moment stretched rain on the roof, my hair clinging damp to my neck, his fingers brushing my cheek as he moved a strand aside, and then a deep breath, as if he had to hold himself back. In another life, maybe that would have been the moment we crossed the line. In this one, it became the moment we both silently acknowledged the line existed. But lines are curious things. Over days and nights, fate kept nudging us toward its edge. One night, I could not sleep. I wandered into the kitchen to find him there, a pot of tea steaming. He poured me a cup without asking. No words between us except the steady sound of rain against the windows. We sat, hardly talking, but the quiet felt safe. Later, walking back to the guest house, he fell into step beside me. Before I opened the door, I felt him hesitate, then softly say, "You deserve more than what life has given you." It was not a declaration, but it was enough to embed itself under my skin. Each day after, I noticed every detail, the way his shirt smelled faintly of fresh laundry and earth, the light sound of his laugh when I teased him about misplacing his glasses, the firm gentleness in his touch when he helped me carry in boxes, and somewhere beneath those details lived the awareness that this was Lydia's father, the man whose home I had been entrusted to. He was off limits, but my heart could not seem to understand limits. The night before I left at summer's end, we found ourselves alone in the backyard, the stars spilling like silver dust across the dark. We talked, voices low, every word brushing at something just outside of saying. He stood close enough that I could hear the steady rhythm of his breath. I looked up, and in that instant, realized he had been looking at me not as Lydia's friend, but as a woman he wanted to know beyond polite dinners and passing conversations. He did not kiss me that night, and I did not ask him to. Instead, he reached for my hand just once and held it. Warmth flooded through me, not wild or reckless, but deep and steady like the turning of a tide. He let go after a moment, enough to mark it as something we could carry quietly. I left the next day with my bag heavy at my side and my heart heavier still. The guest house door closed, but in my mind, the summer had opened one instead. The world would judge, perhaps even Lydia one day, and I knew we might never allow ourselves the kind of love we were capable of. But for the first time in years, I felt seen. I felt alive. And maybe in some future we could not yet name, the tide would turn again. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.